No, it's not echoing though.
Still sounds like there's...
I don't know. I'm not used to it. Ooh.
There's feedbacks.
It says you're muted. You can hear it echo. Yeah.
Is anyone on Zoom here?
Medfield TV
I-
is on the
Okay, so now you're muted. You said you can't hear it. You can't hear.
They won't be able to hear the microphones.
That's what's causing the issue.
That's the feedback, I think. It's your, yeah.
So, I'm not.
Well, that's here.
Okay, he's muted now.
Yeah, so that's the owl, so I would still be, yeah. Okay. Oh, it sounds fine listening to me? Okay. Oh, it's just in here, okay. Okay. All right, we're good.
We're good?
Yep, Medfield TV's good.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Scott McDermott. I'm here tonight as a neighbor and as a volunteer to host and facilitate, but to not moderate the Community Information Forum. I'm here in my full unofficial capacity. And of course, tonight's forum is a prelude to our annual town meeting on Monday evening at 7 p.m. in the high school gymnasium. I always give a commercial to the booklets that are sent home. It is really a great way to get informed, which is what tonight is about, and to get further informed. So I suggest that to everybody. The name tells the story. I have a passion for both community and for information, particularly as information kind of escalates up to insight, and insight becomes understanding, and that's what we're trying to do tonight, and to bring into the town meeting on Monday night, so that we have the best deliberations and make the best decisions as a town. I welcome everybody here live in our studio audience here in the high school's Library Media Center, and welcome to all our neighbors and friends who are tuned in at home and watching on Medfield TV. I noted that both the Bruins and the Celtics played last night, so there might not be as much channel switching as we go on as there would have been last evening. So welcome to all of you, and hopefully a number of people will pick this up on Medfield TV's YouTube channel. It's which is a great resource to be able to go back when it's not immediately convenient to you, but to be able to see and gain some insights going into town meeting. I hope we get some hits on that, so people will do that. So, I'm pleased to welcome and introduce our panel and to thank them for participating in a community information forum. Also like to particularly thank this panel for participating as what has become known as the working group over the course of this winter and spring to deal with the issues that we're going to be talking about tonight, and to deal with them in their complexity, but in a dialogue that involved a number of different parties and perspectives. So thank you for that. So down on my far left, Mike LaFrancesca. Mike is the Director of Finance and Operations for the Medfield Schools. Michelle Kirby is the chairperson of the school committee. Ed Vazella is a senior member of our warrant committee. Steve Callahan is the chairman of the warrant committee. Gus Murby is a member of Medfield's select board. Christine Trioweiler is our town administrator. Seated next to me is Brittany Franklin, our assistant town administrator. We're going to open tonight with the warrant committee chairperson, Steve Callahan, providing a presentation. His presentation, Steve doesn't go always with the catchy title. This one is called Understanding the Fiscal Year 27 Budget and the Budget Override, so that will be the presentation. I look forward to that. Steve will speak approximately for 20 minutes. After Steve presents, I'll provide some brief guidelines for the questions that will follow from our studio audience and from all the folks here. I'm going to turn to Steve, and by the way, having done a lot of things around Medfield for a long time, there are people in this room who would say that the biggest contribution I made to town was appointing Steve Callahan to the warrant committee. So, thank you for that, and I'll let you take it away, Steve.
Thanks a lot, Scott. And good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight and for tuning in if you're online. This is our fiscal 2027 community forum. Our goal tonight's pretty straightforward. It's to walk through the 27 budget, explain how Proposition 2.5 works, outline the operating override that will be before voters at town meeting and at the June 8th special election. This isn't about telling anybody how to vote tonight. It's about giving you clear, factual information so you can make the decision that feels right for you and your family. Let's go to the next slide, I guess. The agenda, I'll leave it there, the agenda. So our plan for tonight is that we'll start with why fiscal 27 presents a real decision point, and then we'll take a quick plain language look at Prop 2.5, because that state law is the main constraint that's shaping the budget. After that, we'll walk through the two budget scenarios, the Prop 2.5 budget and the override budget. And we'll explain Articles 13, 14, and 15 and how they fit together at town meeting. And we'll look at the tax impact and some peer comparisons for context. And then we'll open it up for your questions. I should mention, if you didn't grab it on the way in, there might be extra copies of the presentation on the table over there. And for those of you that are online, the presentation is also available on the Warrant Committee website under meeting packets. Next slide. So there's two paths forward. Fiscal 2027 really does come down to two different paths. If the override passes, the core school staffing and programs stay in place, and town services, the library, council on aging, DPW, public safety, and general government are preserved. The revenue base increases permanently, which means it grows at 2.5% going forward, and the stabilization fund gives us a 2-year financial runway. Now, if the override does not pass, reductions take effect July 1st. That includes multiple school positions, council on aging Saturday hours, reduction in DPW maintenance, impacts to animal control, and the end of dog waste pickup at Medfield State Hospital. The structural deficit remains, which means the town would likely face another override sooner. Both scenarios are factual projections. The choice is entirely up to Medfield voters. Next slide. So this slide explains why fiscal 2027 forces a decision. On the left are the shared and fixed costs. These are things that the town must pay before any money goes to departments. Health insurance is up 14.3%. The Norfolk County Agricultural Vocational Assessment is up 113.8%. And these are contractually or legally required obligations. And on the right side are the normal year-to-year increases needed to maintain level services. Contractual obligations for employees, special education, tuition and transportation, general education, transportation, utilities, energy costs, supplies, and service contracts. And when you put it all together, the shared and fixed costs are rising at 5.9%. Departmental pressures rise even faster, and the allowable revenue growth is capped at 1.8%. So you can see the math simply doesn't work. The need exceeds the revenue. And to put this into context, the level service department requests were about 5% on the school side and 3.6% on the town side. But after the shared and fixed costs, only 1.8% was left for departments. That mismatch is what creates the structural gap that you're seeing here. For example, as you can see, the available revenue for departments is $1.1 million, which is about $800,000 for the school budget. Well, just the contractual obligation of employees is $1.5 million. You add in an increase of $333,000 in new transportation contracts, and utilities increase of $69,000, and you can quickly see the problem. This isn't a one-year blip. These pressures have been building for several years, and fiscal 2027 is the point where they converge. The override is a response to that long-term structural reality. It's not a sudden spike or a change in spending behavior. Next slide. So Proposition 2.5, just to understand the budget, we need to understand this major constraint. Prop 2.5 limits how much property tax revenue the town can raise each year, and the levy limit grows each year. They take last year's levy limit, it grows by 2.5%, and then you get to add in any new growth from new construction. That's it. Rising property values do not increase town revenue. When values go up, the tax rate goes down to stay within the levy limit. So this is the single biggest constraint on Medfield's budget. Next slide. The 2027 budget split between school and town. Under the Prop 2.5 budget, this is the budget without an override. The schools receive 1.79% increase, and the town receives a 1.84% increase. This keeps Medfield's long-standing 75-25 school and town split. But because the overall revenue is so limited, these increases are not enough to maintain level services. Next slide. So, without an override, if the override does not pass, we will have reductions totaling $1.685 million, taking effect July 1st. On the town side, that includes eliminating 2 part-time positions, a reduced animal control and police overtime capacity, closing the Council on Aging on Saturdays, ending dog waste pickup at Medfield State Hospital, scaling back DPW services, reducing library materials funding, and other general government costs. On the school side, reductions include multiple positions across all schools in the central office, shifting kindergarten teachers to the revolver fund due to tuition increases, savings from retirements, and other administrative reductions. Every department is affected: schools, public safety, DPW, Council on Aging, library, and administration. Next slide. So the override totals $1.95 million, and of that, $1.04 million supports the 27 operating budget, and it restores most significant reductions. The remaining $914,000 goes into the override stabilization fund to support fiscal 2028. This plan reflects a consensus among the Select Board, the School Committee, and the Warrant Committee, and it maintains the 75-25 proportionality. But it's important to be clear that the override does not restore everything. Even with the override, the schools still need to close a gap of about $610,000, and the town needs to close a gap of about $40,000. These remaining reductions, while smaller and manageable, are necessary to create a recalibrated level service baseline, a sustainable service level that fits within a multiple-year plan and avoids back-to-back overrides. The override preserves what residents rely on most, while acknowledging that costs are rising faster than allowable revenues. Those remaining reductions are part of what makes the multi-year plan work. And that brings us to the next slide, how the override stabilization fund bridges 2027 to fiscal 2029. So as you see, this is a multi-year plan. It is in fiscal 27, the $1 million, $1.04 million goes to the operations for fiscal 27, and $914 goes into the stabilization fund. In fiscal 28, the town draws down that $914 and uses it for operations and avoiding another override. And by fiscal 29, the expectation is that we would have new growth from the Trinity development, estimated at $1.3 million, and that's expected to help close the structural gap. So this approach provides stability, predictability over a 3-year period. Next slide. So Articles 13, 14, and 15. At town meeting, voters will consider these 3 related articles. Article 13 is the fiscal 2027 operating budget under Proposition 2.5. The overrides, Article 14 is the override stabilization fund, and that creates that stabilization fund, and that requires a 2/3 vote. Article 15 is the fiscal 27 operating budget with the override. All 3 articles are voted at town meeting. Next slide. So if town meeting approves the override budget, the override must also pass at the June 8th special election. Both votes must pass the override to take effect. If either vote fails, the town proceeds with the Prop 2.5 budget. Looking ahead, the long-term questions for Medfield is how we want to balance services, taxes, and structure of our revenue base. Prop 2.5 limits revenue growth. A narrow commercial base means homeowners carry most of the load, and service expectations in a community like Medfield are high. Tonight's goal is simply to make the fiscal reality clear so residents can weigh those choices with full information. Next slide. So, in terms of the average tax impact, for the average Medfield home that's assessed at $1 million, the The fiscal 2027 tax impact is $874. The override portion is $473 per year, or about $39 a month. The part that you normally see every year, the Prop 2.5 piece of it, is $401, and that the two of those make up the $874. So, and the other, just another note is that 56% of Medfield homes are assessed below $1 million. And I would also note that if you want to know exactly what the tax impact is for you in particular, you can go to the town website, and there is an application that you can access. It's in the override page, and you can learn what your specific tax impact is just simply by inputting your address into the application. Okay, next slides. So a little bit about peer benchmarking. We took a look at peer benchmarking. We looked at other towns, and we looked at a number of metrics. The percentage of schools, the percentage of the budget that the school makes up, the operating budget. And you can see the key takeaway is that a high school share of the budget does not mean a high school spending. Medfield's school share is high because the municipal side is very lean and because we have a very narrow commercial and industrial tax base. On actual spending, Medfield is in the middle of the peer group. What makes us look school-heavy is the structure of our revenue base, not overspending. And this matters for the override discussion. In communities with a broader commercial base, more of the cost of services is carried by businesses. In Medfield, with a commercial industrial tax base share under 5%, the cost of services falls overwhelmingly on homeowners. You can go to the next slide. So growing the commercial base is one way communities reduce that burden. But if commercial development remains limited, the economic reality is straightforward. Maintaining services, forget about expanding them, will continue to rely primarily on residential taxes. Different communities make different choices about land use and development. We're not going to weigh in on those choices tonight, but to explain the fiscal implications so residents understand the long-term context. Under Prop 2.5, a narrow commercial base means a greater share of the cost of services falls on homeowners. That's the structural context behind Medfield's numbers. Before we move on, I just want to pause on that one structural point that often gets lost in budget discussions. Under Prop 2.5, towns with a broader commercial industrial tax base have more flexibility because a larger share of their services is funded by businesses. Medfield's commercial base, as we said, is very small, under 5%. So most of the burden is carried by residential taxpayers. If commercial growth remains limited, the economic reality is straightforward. Maintaining services will continue to rely primarily on residential taxes. Next slide. This is just some information about our average single-family tax bill ranking. In fiscal 2026, Medfield's average single-family tax bill ranked the 30th highest in the state. This is the lowest ranking in 38 years and lowest ranking on record. We are no longer among the highest tax communities. Our relative position has improved steadily. You'll notice that in 2019, we were at a ranking of 15, and we've slowly gone to 30 over that time period. Next slide. So at the end of the day, your voice matters. This is your community, your services, and your decision. All the budget materials and the presentations and the FAQs, there's a very good FAQ, a series of FAQs on the website. and we encourage everybody to avail yourself of all those resources. And we also encourage everybody to attend town meeting on May 4th and vote on June 8th. And I think we're at the Q&A session now, Scott.
And your last slide is a perfect segue to that. So following up on Steve's presentation, we'd like to be...
Oops, wait, sorry, Scott.
Yes.
The school committee has a quorum, so they want to open their meeting. And the select board has a quorum. We don't have one, I don't think. Yeah, we don't have one. So go ahead.
Absolutely. Sure. Leo's on.
Get some committees called to order.
Here we have all three members of the Select Board present in the audience, so I will, I guess I'll move that we open the Select Board meeting. Do we have a second out there from the audience? Second. All right, we have a second from the audience from Select Board Member Murphy. I think we still do a roll call, I think, to have this work right. So I'll say Chair Peterson.
Aye, aye.
Chair Peterson votes aye. Select Board Member Murphy. Select Board Murphy votes aye, aye, and Select Board Member Murphy votes aye. We are now open.
Yes.
So I'd like to take a moment to open the school committee meeting with a roll call vote. Michelle Kirkby here. Mike? Mike McCabe here. Sophia? Leo?
Second.
Oh, I see him.
Very. Try again, Leo.
Okay, Leo Brem here. Okay, that's all we have for this evening.
All set. So following up on the presentation, we'd like to begin with questions focused on the budget and the budget override articles. So although the forum is not limited to that, I think it makes sense to continue with that. So we'd like to first hear questions around Steve's presentation and the budget override articles, and then we'll hold the questions on the other warrant articles that are not budget related, and we'll deal with them after that. The intention is to alternate questions from our guests here in the media center and from folks who will bring questions in from home. If you're going to ask a question here, if you would just approach the podium and you can ask the question from there. And if you're asking the question at home, Brittany will read it, or can people be escalated or elevated onto the screen?
People can either raise their hand if they would like to participate, and I will allow you to speak, or you can type your answer or your question in the Q&A, and we'll read it.
This is a forum in anticipation of Monday night's annual town meeting, so we are going to limit the content, the relevant topic, to those that are within the town meeting report, the articles that are going to be before the town on Monday. You've heard me say this before, questions must be a question. They should prompt a question mark. We're really focused on questions tonight. We're not looking for personal opinions or commentary or points of view, even if posing as a question. debate and deliberation before decision-making at the town meeting. So, but for tonight, we're looking to really and answer questions. After you've had the opportunity to ask a question, you'll go to the end of the queue and then return to ask a question only after others of your neighbors have had the opportunity to ask their question. Questions may have a follow-up, but we want to distinguish between asking a question and questioning, so we'll limit it to a single follow-up. And as always, questions by tone and substance should be respectful. So if anybody wants to start off with the first question from here in the...
There's questions online.
There are questions online? Okay, why don't we, Brittany, why don't you either escalate somebody or elevate somebody or read a question?
We have just an Amanda. So I guess for future, can you please state your first and last name and where you live? But Amanda, so the funds for a passing override will come from increased property taxes. That's a question.
That's correct.
And Jeremy Marset, will funding for the override stabilization fund come from the FY27 tax levy, even though would be used for FY28?
$5 million does impact the 27 tax levy. And then we will we're not going to spend it all in 27. We're going to take part of it and put it into the stabilization fund. And the reason we're doing that is because we don't want to have back-to-back overrides. So that.
And approaching the podium over there and ask your question.
Russ Hallisey, 11 Ledge Tree Road. So I was going to ask this question, but this sort of leads me into the question. Because the tax levy of 27 is going to fund both 27 and 28, do I also understand that this override is only in place, will raise our taxes that certain amount from that calculator? It'll only be taxed 2 years. And my question was going to be, what happens in the third year? Does that tax go away? And it's the reason you wrote it that way, that it's for 2 years, is because we're funding 27 and 28. Do they go together?
Yeah, let me try to answer you. It's a good question. So the override will, it is all in the 27 levy. And the levy gets permanently increased, so that it doesn't go down unless we have an underride, which I've never heard of.
I saw somewhere in here that it was going away in 2 years.
No, it's
okay.
Unless there's an underride, which I've never seen happen. So, but it's a permanent. And so the only way to fix that is to either cut or raise. So.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Question online?
There's no further ones online about the
No further
budget.
questions online? Somebody else from the audience, please step up to the podium.
Hi, Steve Cole, 18 Headers Hill Road. Just a question about what are the main contributors to the cost increase? Like I see some of the cost increase are listed on one of the slides, like the vocational school assessment up 113.8%, but I don't have a sense for the magnitude of that. So like what's the...
Yeah, I can give you that information. So the biggest increase was health insurance, and that was about $800,000. just for health insurance. And that's a 14.5% increase. The school assessment, the vocational school assessment, that's gone up $166,000. And that is primarily due to a doubling of the people, of the students who are attending the vocational school.
Okay.
So we get assessed based on the number of students that attend that, and there's a doubling of the students that went last year versus this coming year. So on the shared fixed side, there's also some additional general insurance increases that are happening. And then in the department side, the big drivers of the increase. So right there, there's like $1 million, right before you get to the departments. The departments have utility pressures, and they also have transportation. They signed the school department signed a new contract for transportation. It's a new 3-year contract that is about, between that and the special education transportation, it's like $330,000 right there. And so, and then you have the basic, collective bargaining agreements for all the employees that are, that we knew, but we're getting squeezed on all sides, so there's not a lot left to cover that. Just on the school side, that's $1.5 million, just basic steps and lanes of the current school employees. So it's a big number,
I did have one other question, but
Please,
I don't want to.
Go ahead.
Okay. The other question was there's like a roughly $100,000 difference between the reserve fund of like $900,000, which I think is going to be applied to 28. Is that right? And then the money that's going to be used for this year, which is $1 million. Is that right?
Yes.
So I guess I'm just wondering, does that gap, is that going to be lower services, or is it going to be the 2.5% the following year?
Yeah, good question. So what we did is we did detailed projections for 2 years. We went out to 27 and 28, and so there happens to be a little more. While the 27 budget was capped at 1.8% growth for departments, the 28 budget was 2.1%, so it was slightly higher, which allowed us to not ask for a bigger override for that for 28. So that's why it's a lower amount.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Have another online question.
Jeremy Marset again. Is the funding for the override stabilization fund a one-time amount or permanent, like an operating override? So that's speaking specifically about the stabilization fund.
So the override is a combination of the two numbers. It's 1.95 million. That's the amount that goes into the levy for 2027. We're not going to spend 914,000 of that in 27. We're only going to spend $1.1 million. The 914,000 will go into the stabilization fund, and when we get to 28, we will use we won't have another override. We'll use that money to cover the budget, the operating budget in 28. So,
Please, approach the podium. Thank you.
I was debating about getting up, but Catherine Herbzuber, 29 Maple Lane. You're guaranteeing us that we will not have another override the following year because of the stabilization fund, is that correct?
well, I don't like to guarantee anything.
But I'm just saying what you said.
I tried to get 3 committees to agree to that.
So there are no guarantees?
There's no guarantees,
Okay.
but 3 committees in principle agree that nobody wants a second override in 2028. And that's what that commitment letter that we...
Yeah,
I don't know
it's
if you
kind
get
of
it.
like fingers crossed that it doesn't happen.
Well, I mean, I think there would have to be something extraordinary that happens.
Okay. If the override fails, as put forth in the two paths forward, it says immediate staff and service reductions in fiscal year '27, multiple school positions eliminated across all schools and central offices. That sounds extreme to me because I read something that said possibly 2 staff members, 2.5 staff members, a half a staff member. This makes it sound like we would lose a lot of staff.
Yes, we would. And I will let maybe Mike or Michelle explain the numbers to you. There's quite a few. Yeah.
So with the override going through the 3.64, we're still eliminating 3 positions in our budget. If the override fails, then we are eliminating 12 more positions on top of the 3 positions.
Thank you for that clarification.
Which would mean approximately, 2 teachers per elementary school, and then teachers at the middle school and high school.
Okay, and thank you for that. I appreciate that. But in all due respect to the administration of the school, I don't hear any administrative staff being cut. It's always the teachers, and the teachers are the
Could you reframe that as a
heart.
question?
Excuse me?
Could you just reframe that as a question?
Oh,
It sounds like
okay.
a
How come
comment.
there's no cut in administrative staff?
Do you want me to answer that?
I mean, I think if you look at our schools right now, right, each elementary school has 1 principal. So I think when you're looking in that space right there, you're not going to be able to take an administrator away from one of the elementary schools and leave them without a principal. When you go up to the middle school and the high school, I believe we have a principal and an assistant principal at the middle school, which again, for the size of the school, is very appropriate from an administration level ratio to the students. And then the high school is 1 principal and 2 assistant principals to that as well. So when you're looking at cutting administrators, we're already running pretty lean compared to, if you look at some of our town comparable, like other towns around us and
Okay.
how they run.
All right. Do we not have only 2 grades in one of the schools?
The elementary schools have 2 grades, yes, and
2
1
grades.
principal.
So we have administrators in,
So for Memorial, we have, we have preschool, kindergarten, and 1st grade, and our youngest, right, and they have 1 principal. Our Wheelock has 2nd and 3rd grade, and they have 1 principal. And then Dale has 4th and 5th, and they have 1 principal.
no assistant principals?
Correct.
Okay. All right. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next question. Any further questions? Dick?
I wasn't sure whether someone who was online.
No, we never next
Dick
online
Judge, 8
question.
Juniper, proud resident of the town of Medfield. I thought we'd see the school administrator here, Mr. Marsden. Is
I believe Dr. Marsden's online. He had a family commitment this evening.
excellent. So perhaps he can answer some of these questions online as well. So my hat's off to the warrant committee. You guys always do a stellar job of putting it all together and helping us grasp the enormity of a potential tax increase. But the information, and I'll pose this as a question.
Thank you.
Would you say, Steve, that the information, you can only make decisions based on the information you're given?
Yeah, I think that's probably accurate.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds
So
like
it-
a question.
We don't
So
like
the
to
question-
make up information.
That's a question. So
Yeah.
the next question is, if that information were incomplete, would you say that your data might be incomplete?
These are like leading questions,
Not-
right? I mean,
Not necessarily.
So I'll keep leading along here.
No, that's not the point of this, actually. To seek information that you don't know the answer to by asking a question.
Okay. Here, I'm looking for, and specifically with the schools, and that's why
Yeah.
I'm
Just ask the
disappointed that,
question. You don't need to lead
Dr.
anybody.
Marsden isn't here.
Open-ended questions.
The amount of we pay for legal fees, the school department has their own legal department, or they hire their own attorneys. So how much we spend on that how much we spend on tech-related fees, because I've added the technology.
No, you don't need to look at me. You're asking a question of one of the people on the panel, so please make it a question.
So we have, we added up the tech-related fees, and they're $1.6 million for the schools.
What are the fees?
The tech-related costs.
Cost, okay, not fees, cost.
Well, there are fees built in there, I'm sure, as well.
Are they cost or are they fees? Because I just want to answer the question correctly.
Combined.
Excuse me?
Combined. Tech costs and fees.
All right, so we don't have fees, but we do have costs associated with technology.
Yes.
Okay.
The question is, would you say they're around 1.6 million?
In the operational or
For
combined?
the school system.
In the operational or for capital? Because in capital, we have 300,000, okay? And that is an agreement that was made, what, 6 or 7 years ago? When they changed the bylaw to say that certain items over 5 years need to be capital items.
So if we back $300,000 out of the 1.6 million that I have,
Okay, so
would you say that 1.3 million in technology?
Can you specify
Costs?
what you have in those? Because we have 700,000 for cost in our operational that are non-payroll costs. There's 700,000. So I don't understand where that number is coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't understand where that number is coming from.
My point is, to my questioning is, did the warrant committee receive all the information regarding the different costs the school department is going through with, I have $1.6 million that I added up. Did they look at consulting fees and the costs of the consulting fees?
But what consultants?
So I can dig into it if you like.
Yeah, no, because we
I mean, I
don't
can
have
ask AI right now, and they'll give me the...
Yeah, we don't have consultants, so I'm asking what consultants.
Well, do you have legal consultants?
We are obligated by state law to have a law firm on. So every Commonwealth, every single school district in Commonwealth of Massachusetts has to have a legal firm to represent the school committee.
And do we know what the cost is of that?
Yes, I do.
And was that given to the warrant committee?
Yes, it was.
And how much is that?
So there's 2 line items for legal.
Yeah.
One is for special educational services.
Yes.
And that's 20,000.
Yeah.
And then there's one for 35,000 for school committees. So there's 2 line items.
I'm going to have to look at those numbers because something's not adding up.
Okay, so if you look at can you look at our, it's online right now, I can show you. That all the exact actual costs are online, line by line, on our website.
Yeah. So
technology.
I'm going to find 20,000 and 35,000 and not a dime over.
You're going to find that in our...
Okay.
Correct.
Because I have it as 35,000 is for a retainer.
If you look at, I can go through the budget with you.
So tech-related fees, legal fees, consultant fees.
So I just want to specifically, what are the consultants fees? Because we don't have consultants. I just don't understand what that
You have
line
legal
item is.
consultants, right?
We don't have legal consultants. We have a legal firm.
You don't consult with attorneys?
We have a legal firm that we're required to have by state law.
I'll make my question and my point.
Not your point, just your question.
The question to the warrant committee is, are you sure you're seeing all the costs the schools have been putting forward? So I don't want you to get torn apart at town meeting when people say, well, guess what? No. Because there's a lot. And so I'm hoping that the school committee has, and the superintendent have participated with you fully and openly, and so we can have a great discussion about whether they have looked at cutting costs. Because we've heard tonight about teachers being cut and about all these doom and gloom, but we haven't heard that the schools have cut costs. And primarily, I can point this out because when the schools negotiated down to a lower number, all of a sudden, the 3 or 4 teachers that were going to disappear turned into 1 teacher. So if they can do that with that, then I'm sure we can work something out with that. So
Let's answer your question.
Yep.
All right, so I think, let me start, and then you can, so on the making cuts, right, I thought I mentioned this in my comments, that even with, assuming an override passes, there's $610,000 that's going to get cut from the school department budget, that they've identified where that's going to come from. So this, it's not true that, if that assumes an override passes, it's much greater, right, if it doesn't pass. And, with regards to our work, we have someone on we're very fortunate, we have someone on our warrant committee, Ed, whose former career was actually Mike LaFrancesca's position. Okay, so he spent many years at the Medfield School District. And so
we're a fortunate town.
Yes, we're very fortunate. And I'll let you explain what he does and how he goes about, reviewing the budgets.
Well, I've been reviewing the school budgets now for about 7 years, and I work with Mike and Jeff, and they have been nothing but transparent in everything. We look at every single line item. We look at all of the activity going through the revolvers. We break down payroll into its component parts. I even go and I check some of the mathematical calculations within the payroll. And Mike asked me to do that just because it's such a massive Excel spreadsheet. You need someone looking at it independently just to make sure there's no mistakes. And I've been doing that every single year. We go through every single expense line. We categorize it. Special ed, transportation, whether it be special ed transportation, regular transportation. We go through the technology budget and the lines within it. And as Mike said, it's like $680,000 budgeted for next year. You made reference to the fact that at times during the budget process, in order to come down, let's say there's $610,000 that they need to cut. Well, if there's something that breaks, let's say a person decides to retire in June, we don't know that now. So, and that person makes $80,000. That $80,000, we've just covered part of that 610. So you don't have to cut that person who was in the $610,000. So things can change. Remember, these budgets are prepared in October of last year for 27 and then 28. So things can change. I can tell you everything ties out to the general ledger. Mike has to do that every single year by the end of September, do what they call an end-of-year report, where everything ties out to the general ledger, and it is audited by an outside audit firm. So I'm quite comfortable that I understand the numbers, and there aren't any numbers out there that I'm unaware of.
So being quite comfortable with the numbers, you know that numbers don't change that much over the years, that we have increases and so forth. And we were just told here tonight that chances are that no emergency is going to happen. So everyone's comfortable with coming in with this number, so we don't have to come back again to the well next year.
Sure.
Right?
In order for, there'd have to be something drastic.
Right. So taking that statement and putting it into this year, did really something happen that drastic?
What do you mean?
I mean, for an increase
what's
of this size.
I mean, for 27?
Yeah.
Well, Steve made reference to the increases we had in the initial school budget came in over 5% for a level service budget. And there were huge increases in special ed transportation, the regular transportation, the heat and natural gas. All of those added up to let me see, 180 plus 150 plus 130, you're looking at almost like 480,000 just in those 3 line items.
Right.
And then when you couple that with the normal, just the normal increase in steps and lanes for payroll, you're going to come in with a 4% increase, it's $1.5 million. And that's just the cost of doing business every single year. I can go back and look at prior years and see what percentage every single year was, because when we look at this, we don't look at it in a vacuum. We look at it over the course of time. We go back here 6, 7 years. I've got a spreadsheet that goes back 8 or 9 years.
So why didn't we see this coming?
We did see this coming. As a matter of fact, that's a very good point.
How many years ago did we see this coming?
We knew at the end of last year when we did the budget for this year.
That's just last year.
Well-
You said we have numbers that go way back.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me just maybe make a couple comments. I think, keep in mind, we're trying to budget 18 months out, okay? So it's not an exact science, okay? But we did inform the town last year in our letter in the warrant that if you go back and read it, you'll see there was some language in there that alluded to the fact that we have a structural deficit problem. I think the big thing that sort of the perfect storm that happened this year was health insurance. It's a big part of that shared fixed cost before you even get to the departments. And it went up, last year it went up, I think, 17%. This year it went up 14.5%. And they're expecting it to do that in 28. So the health insurance in this state is broken. It's a problem. No matter where
That happened this year, the broken health insurance? I don't mean to be facetious, but that's been going on for a long time.
Well, I think last year was sort of our first year that we sort of really saw it. We were able to handle it, but within the budget. But
my challenge is, and I'll put it in the terms of a question: why do I think that the school has not done enough to make cuts on their end before coming to the public and asking for a huge increase? Why do I feel that way? I'm looking at some big numbers here for tech-related fees, $1.6 million, and we'll talk more about it. Salaries.
This is
legal fees.
What's the question?
I appreciate, Dick, this, but I'm going to ask you if you want to circle back around.
No, I'm going to wrap it up. I appreciate the work of the warrant committee. Listen, this is not about hammering you guys. This is about you guys getting the right information and you guys being able to work the numbers, because I'm sure that Ed worked the numbers. I'm not so sure the numbers are correct. Thank you.
Okay, we have an online question.
Jeremy Marset. I understand the funding to the override stabilization fund would be a one-time amount of $918 levied in FY27 with no further funding in subsequent years. However, the $1.04 million operating override would be permanent. Am I correct?
The operating override is $1.9 million. That's the amount that's permanent.
Okay. And his follow-up question to that, would this approach create a structural deficit for FY29?
It does. We are, the assumption, the operating assumption is that, we don't have any guarantees on this, but the operating assumption is that we think it's more likely than not that the state hospital will be complete and developed by then, and that if it does get constructed and occupied, that we would have $1.3 million of additional tax revenue from that property, and that would solve. At least, we can't. I can't sit here and say I've solved 5 years of, in the future. But at least for the next 3 years, assuming the hospital happens, that will, that will take care of you know, the next 3 years.
We do have more in mind if you want.
The override plus, you know, plus the development of the hospital.
We have another online question.
Or do you want to?
Do you want to ask the one that came to me?
Earlier, yeah, Mike was going to, I asked Mike to kind of step up to do that, so maybe we'll do that question. This came in by email to the warrant committee.
Oops.
You might want to read the question and who it's from.
Yeah, this is from Leah Chacon of Minuteman, asking the question about, basically, I've been wondering about the town's voting process and if there's the opportunity to reevaluate how the town does its voting. It's extremely hard for parents, when both parents, to be present to attend meetings. And Michael, you saw the question.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's one, Scott, I know you've heard before. I think everyone up here has asked and heard before. I've, you know, heard every day since I moved here. I mean, it is town meeting, if you're not from Massachusetts and, you know, not living in a town, it's kind of a shock to the system. The only bigger shock to my system when I moved to Medfield was after 2 weeks of putting my trash out in front of my house, finding out that no one was going to pick it up. And that trash was going in my SUV into the transfer station, a weekly tradition that I love now. But, you know, it's not something that's intuitive unless you're from a town in Massachusetts. And you sort of, I like to take a step back, and this is something I you know, learned from Scott, you know, sitting, watching him for many years at preside over town meeting, and explain that town meeting, what we're doing in town meeting is legislating. We keep saying voting. It's a little different. It's not voting for a representative. It's not voting for a ballot initiative. You are voting as a legislator for town bylaws and the town budget. And so when you take it like that, there are restrictions under state law for how a town can legislate. And there are three options for towns. You can have a town council, which looks similar to city council that most people, you know, from Boston or other cities would recognize. Very few towns have a town council. Then you have you can have representative town meeting, which is like what we do, except it's fewer people legislating, and you are voting basically for a neighbor to have your vote at town meeting. Now, about 30, or you know, maybe as many as 35 towns in Massachusetts have representative town meeting. About 260 towns in Massachusetts do it the way we do in Medfield. So this isn't a Medfield thing. This isn't something, you know, the town elders got together and said, you know, we want to do things the old-fashioned way. It is one of the most common types of legislating for towns. And then once you understand that, and once you accept that, then there are even more restrictions as far as when and how you can have town meetings. So by charter, we have it on the first Monday in May at 7 o'clock at the high school gym. And it has to be in person under state law. You can't vote from home. You can't send a proxy. It is, again, it's open town meeting, so you actually have to show up. Now, all that being said, I want as many people to come to town meeting that want to be there. I know everyone up there feels the same way. So, within the limitations, there are things we can do. I know that some teachers are volunteering to do babysitting this year. You know, we have extra seating. You know, for those that you know, don't want to be in a room elbow to elbow with everybody, extra seating here. You know, if there are any accommodations that can be made, please reach out to me. Please reach out to anyone at the table here, and we'll try to work it out. But just know that, these aren't random restrictions that we decided to put on the voters in Medfield. This is, what we have to work with under state law.
You can step up to the podium if you'd like to follow up on a question. To Mike, please do.
Lester Starr, 5 Ledge Tree Road. I have a question about this graph, okay? And the stabilization fund. The way I interpret this is that if you do the stabilization fund, you don't spend the money next year, you spend it the following year. And then, but the tax rate, okay, is based on the 2.5, next year's 2.5% levy is based on what you levy this year, correct? It includes that stabilization fund monies.
Yeah, I think that's correct, yeah.
Okay.
I'll make sure I understand your question. Could you just repeat it again?
Well, my question is, well, why do the stabilization fund? Why don't you just do it incrementally, okay?
Yeah.
All right, if you need the money the following year, to come and ask for the money the following year. Why do the stabilization fund?
Yeah, okay.
Because now you're increasing the tax base, okay, that the next year's 2.5% is going to be based on, okay?
Right. I understand your question. So the reason why the working group decided that it was better to do this approach, it is used by other towns. This is not something we're making up on our own. There's a number of other towns that have used it. Is that there's a cost to having an override, action part of it, right? And then also
so let's come every year and do this then.
Well,
I mean,
that's one approach. You could have 2 overrides. Yes, that is an approach. We didn't think that was the best approach, but that is an approach. It doesn't give a lot of certainty, though, to the departments when they have to plan multi-million-dollar, tens of millions of dollars of budgets and personnel. It doesn't give them a lot of certainty as to what's going to happen. You're talking about over, the 400 people in the school department. And there's a good number on the town side. I don't know the exact number, but what happens if it passes this year, but then it doesn't pass the second year? Well, then you're making personnel hiring decisions.
Well, you can do this what ifs for wherever. Okay. Well, I think we should deal with that if it happens. Okay, because right now, reading this graph here, this override costs more than your base level is.
That's correct. Yes, that's because it includes 2 years.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, why do I want to pay for it now? Okay, and we don't know all these assumptions are going to come true. We don't know if that hospital, okay, if that's all going to be built and we're going to have the income from that. I think we should just, based on the facts we have now, and deal with it now.
Okay, well, no, I understand your point of view.
Yep.
That's not, that wasn't
vote on, though, at the town meeting will be it's going to be either to lay off 15 teachers or to lay off 3 teachers. That's what it amounts to.
Well, there's some cuts on the town side too, but yeah, that's the school side. Yeah.
I'm just using that off the top of my head here.
Yeah.
I think we should just do it year by year and address the problems that we have. We don't have a crystal ball, so.
Well, we
don't have that option now, though, right? Because the amount is fixed, right? You can't change the amount of their override, right?
You can technically change it. You can also vote against it,
Can you make a motion at the town meeting to change to eliminate the stabilization fund and vote on that money for that?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. That could be done.
Okay. Well, I'll make that motion on the town meeting.
Okay.
Let's talk after now.
Pardon?
We'll talk after now.
Talk to Mike.
Well, I know how to do it. I've been here for 40 years. I know how to do it.
Okay. Brittany, we have a question online?
Yes. What do you?
Yeah, before we go on
Do you
to
want
the
to do it
next
now?
question, is it okay?
Oh, please.
Gus wanted to make a comment about the stabilization fund.
Anytime.
You're, as a member of this working committee, the questions you're asking, the question you asked is, I think, the question I raised early. And the real question here is, why would you agree to allocate money for 2 years' worth of an override in FY27 with something less than 100% ironclad guarantee that there won't be another override in 2028? Steve mentioned a couple of things that are around the administrative. It's a simpler thing for us in 2028 if we know we have the money in 2027, if the taxpayers will agree to fund a 2-year override with a stabilization fund that hangs on to that second year's amount of money that's projected in that stabilization fund. And so it does a couple things from my standpoint. Why do you want to do that? I think one of the reasons taxpayers should consider doing it is that although there may not be a 100% ironclad guarantee that there will not be a second override next year, two things to consider. Number one, the Warrant Committee has done a serious job of trying to project the growth in costs that it's able to know about. The things that are driving the cost growth in FY27, many of those things like insurance costs are going to keep driving the cost growth in FY28. And so the Warrant Committee did its best to come up with that 2-year projection and try to prepare for that. If you're a taxpayer, if I am a taxpayer, I would like 100% guarantee that no matter what happens, there is not going to be an override next year. And that's asking for a little too much if there are unforeseen serious cost drivers that suddenly, for some reason, show up in FY28. But if I'm a taxpayer and I think about the dynamics of representatives from these 3 boards next year, going in knowing that 2 years from now, there's likely to be a school project looking for a big debt override, there's tremendous pressure on the town side to not, and by town side, I mean the broad town, I don't mean just town departments, to not go in and look for another override next year. So as a taxpayer, I would consider the advantage of, maybe it's not a 100% guarantee, but the advantage for you as a taxpayer to know that all of the pressures on the town and school, the broader town, are going to be to not mess with taxpayers in FY28. That's probably the biggest self-serving reason I think you should consider it. I will say that in the discussions that we've had, I think, Mike, it was your discussions in one of our earlier meetings, there's another reason to think about it from the standpoint of the operation of the town. Whether it's the school or the town side, and we know that we have an override for 1 year, and we know that the cost pressures in the second year are probably still going to be there, if the override amount that's approved is only for FY27, then I have to figure out a way to manage the budget in FY27 that anticipates the possibility that I'm not going to get any kind of an override amount in FY28. And that may drive some more defensive or conservative decisions within the FY27 budgets, because suddenly you have to hedge in a way that you wouldn't have to hedge if you knew that that override budget was there. That, from my perspective, and I'm not telling you that that's a compelling thing and why would you not go with this. I'm saying as you think about it, the logical thing is, well, why don't we just pay each year as we go? I think there are some reasons the taxpayers should consider the possibility of supporting this because of some of the pressures that are going to work in your advantage in FY28, and to help the town, in the broadest sense, not have to make what I'd call shorter-term decisions than we might otherwise make if we know that we have 2 years of relative certainty about what that funding profile is going to look like.
What controls are you going to have on the stabilization budget, on the stabilization fund? That it doesn't
We've got people at, we've got folks at home that, I need to repeat the question. So what the question is, so they can hear it.
What controls are they going to have on the stabilization fund that the money isn't going to be spent on some other?
Yeah.
Okay, what controls in the stabilization fund prevents spending on other projects?
That's a great question. We did look at that. The stabilization fund, in order to take money out of it, will require town meeting vote.
Well, I think you ought to make that point somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
Thank you.
Online question.
Yes, Mr. Moderator, I'm going to put you back on the hot seat. This is from Amanda Green on Rhododendron. What is the reason that kids cannot accompany parents to the town meeting, especially infants that are not covered by any of the provided childcare for the meeting?
So it's a little... It's either the charter or the bylaw, and the town clerk will correct me after the fact, but there is a law about that children between the ages of 15 and 18 are allowed to attend town meeting under the approval of the moderator. And that, I believe that was a Richard DeSorger special in sometime in the 80s, being a history teacher to encourage history students to go to town meeting. That has been viewed in the past, I believe, as precluding any other children under 15 from going to town meeting. What I will say is that in my discretion as moderator, unless your infant is going to pretend to be a voter and skew the standing count, I am probably not going to kick your infant out of town meeting.
Okay. And just one more, if we can keep you up there, expanding a little bit more on why we are an open town meeting and what changes would need to be made in order to change the town meeting.
So that would be a charter change, correct? Yeah. So that would, and I think that is a bifurcated process where you have a vote at town meeting and then a vote at the ballot, I think.
There's multiple votes.
Yeah.
It takes about 5 years to go through the full process.
Right.
Because it's a change in our form of government.
Okay, you're good.
Thank you.
I have more online unless
Please.
someone else.
Any other questions from here? We're going to hold just for a second since you have asked questions. We've got some new
Okay,
people
sure.
online, and when we'll come back to you in a minute.
All right, Casey Worth, 44 South Street. Can you confirm that the schools are taking 94% of the budget cuts versus the town taking 6% of the cuts? Also, can you confirm that 39 teachers have received non-renewal notices last week?
I'll let you take the second part. So on the cuts, the reason it is true that when you look at level services relative to where the budget proposal is that the schools take a larger proportion of the cuts. But that's because their level service is at 5%, and the town is at 3.6%, and their budget is it's 3 times the size of the town's budget, so that's why that happens. So.
I can answer the second part. Yes, non-professional teachers, which means teachers under 3 years of service to the district, did receive they did receive their papers saying that a possibility that their position won't exist next year. That is done in all districts, and we do that due to the fact, because of the teacher's contract, there's bumping rights. So it doesn't mean that a teacher, let's say in second grade, that is going to lose their job. There's bumping rights that go along with that. So we have to issue those to all non-professional status teachers in order to cover the district when the layoffs happen. Does it mean that 39 teachers are losing their jobs? No, it does not mean that 39 teachers are losing their jobs.
Okay, do we have a new question online?
We still have a couple online.
We've got a couple of speakers, Dick. We're going to just go to this gentleman before you because he was before you before, but let's see if we have another question online.
Robin, do we ever do a long-term budget projection, or do we only look at 18 months out?
No, we do a 5-year budget projection every year.
Okay.
Should I reintroduce myself?
Please, yeah, thanks.
The Steve Cole, 18 Hatteras Hill Road. I just wanted to clarify, because I have it kind of in my mind 2 different ways. Is the 1.95 override permanent? Like, so for this year, next year, et cetera?
Yes.
Just wanted to confirm.
Yes, yes. It's not, the only override that's not permanent is a debt override.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So debt overrides, they decrease over time as the debt gets paid off. And operating override's permanent.
So do we end up with, so we have, I guess I'm just trying to understand what happens next year, because there's this $900,000 in the stabilization fund, but then next year you get another 1.95 million from the just a regular taxes. That's right from that. If we have 1.95 extra this year and then 1.95 extra next year because it's permanent, so then what happens with that money? I'm just trying to understand, like, do we end up with like an accumulation of money that, you know,
it grows at 2.5%, basically.
Right, but that we end up with extra stuff that will, I guess, will be accumulating year by year. You're looking.
No, the 1.95 isn't added each year. The 1.95 will be added for fiscal year 27, and then it's increased by 2.5%.
Okay,
you don't add
so it's a minimum of 1.95.
Yeah, you don't add the, it doesn't, yeah.
It doesn't double, if that's your question. No, the tax levy goes up by 1.95, and then it only increases by 2.5% every year after that.
It becomes a permanent part of your base. Yeah.
1.95 is the increase in the tax levy.
Right.
So I guess the tax levy was rated at 1.95 million. So that figure stays the same, and that's what the 2.5% increase for the following year is based on. It's the tax levy.
I guess I'm missing it.
Want to reformulate your question?
Well, no, I'm just.
Do you want to spend a few minutes after the meeting?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, let's talk. We can talk through that. Yeah, we can talk through that with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. One more online, and then we'll come back to Dick.
Sure. Michelle Bennett, in all sectors, the cost of health insurance has increased significantly. Can you tell us the prior cost increases in healthcare?
Yes, so last year we had a 17% increase, and let me actually go back a year before that. So health insurance in Massachusetts is a mandatory subject to collective bargaining. So we have a public employment committee that goes through and we review health insurance costs for our employees for the town. It has union-weighted representation from the teachers, police, and fire. as well as our smaller subset of our unions at the school department. We renegotiated the PEC agreement. We made plan design changes for fiscal year '24, and we actually had a 2.2% cost reduction in our health insurance. And we thought we were great. We were really ready to go. And then in fiscal year '26, based on what was happening nationally in the market for health insurance, GLP-1s, and our usage of healthcare and our experience, we had a 17% increase in our health insurance renewal rate last year for our employees and for the town. This year, the Maya Insurance Board, which is our insurance pool, voted in January not to include GLP-1s in our health insurance plans, and we were able to reduce what was our anticipated 15% renewal this year. We were able to reduce that to a 10.5% renewal. But our health insurance line item that you see also includes our retirees, so it also includes their MedX plan, and they had a 15% renewal this year as well. So we had a negative 2% with our plan design change. We had 17% last year. We're anticipating 10.5 renewal for that, 14.5 overall, and then we'll start meeting with the PEC, the Public Employment Committee, right after town meeting to start negotiating plan design changes and whatever we can do for both the school and the town, schools, town, and all of our employees to try and address that ever-growing increase.
So yeah, that was a question, is for FY '28, what are we looking at?
So FY '28, I believe if you look at our health insurance online, I have anticipated a 10.5% renewal, which is probably in the middle of where we are. I anticipate that it actually will come in probably slightly higher than that. But it's hard to predict until we actually have some negotiating and do some plan design changes.
Okay, just so I stay true to my own guidelines, Dick, I'm going to just pause. We've got some other new people. Chris, you had waved. Were you? You're what?
Letting him go in front of me.
I thought that's what I was here for.
Scott, may I speak?
Please do. Introduce yourself if you would.
Jeff Hyman, Metacomet Street.
Okay.
Yep, I'm going to just say thank you for your service, everybody, and the warrant committee, stellar. Trinity's come up a couple times. It's in writing in the presentation. It's been mentioned. This seems like eggs in a basket, an important basket by 2029. So my question is, because I'm not really sure, what board has care, custody, and control of Medfield State Hospital right now?
Select Board.
Select Board. Okay. I'm curious if you can tell us what are the respective budgets for the care and the maintenance and the upkeep of these buildings 2026, 2027, 2028, and 2029, leading up to a potential handoff to Trinity? What are the budgets?
There's no budget for the upkeep of the buildings.
No budget,
No
zero.
budget. When we signed the LDA with Trinity, it was the buildings were as is at the time we signed the agreement.
Okay, fine, fair enough. What is our plan? Because we can say that, they can agree to it. My question is, well, first I'm going to give you the concern. The buildings are decaying. You're looking at multiple more years until a possible handover. And so the risk goes up. So what I'm hearing is we have zero budget for care of these buildings. So the roofs continue to fail, the buildings continue to decay, and we're just expecting Trinity to be real happy with that. So is there a plan of any kind that somebody here can tell us for the care of these buildings until it's handed off to Trinity?
Yeah.
So I'm on the State Hospital Development Committee, so I don't think anyone else is here necessarily, but we have an agreement for Trinity to buy this property. We had hoped originally that they would have already bought it and that the project would already be underway, but part of that was that Trinity had hoped that the state would provide $25 million in infrastructure funds up front, so that could all have had. So the original plan, by this time, we would have already sold it. that turned out that the state's ability or willingness to fund that infrastructure to date has been on the order of about $5 million a year. So we're 2 years into what ultimately could be a 5-year funding cycle from the state to do that, and that's why things have stretched out. We want Trinity to buy this property. We have no intention, and they bought it fairly cheaply because they're renovating everything, and they're basically taking on significant remediation costs in order to build what they're proposing to build. We have no incentive whatsoever to basically maintain those buildings in a condition that they can be restored. The pressure should be on Trinity to buy this property as soon as possible so that doesn't deteriorate further. They're aware of the condition of the buildings. But if we were to suddenly insulate them from the consequences of taking their time in buying it, and I'm not faulting them for it, but if we were going to insulate them, all we would be doing is taking money, we'd be pouring more money than what Trinity is paying us into keeping the buildings up so that when they finally were comfortable buying them, we had good buildings for them. We have no incentive, no financial incentive to want to do what you're asking for with regard to the buildings.
Question for Mr.
A little
Murphy.
decisive, but
Are you aware of the decay of the buildings? Do you walk the property, and have you seen the decay that is happening today?
if you're talking about certain roofs that have fallen through, we're aware, certainly Belforge is aware of at least one building that's had things fall down. We have people maintaining the security of the building alone.
Okay.
In Trinity, Jeff, Trinity is also on site. They're taking investors through the buildings. They're taking some of their construction team through the buildings, so they are aware. They have made minor, adjustments to their schedule based on that.
So my question is to the board, the select board. Are you concerned about, do you have any concern for safety of the people that are walking around buildings when you have decay and things falling down?
So in order for people to walk into the buildings...
Outside the building, not inside.
So you mean like, are we worried
like
that
a falling down porch that's basically collapsed? If that exists, is that a safety concern, and are we prepared to deal with that? So people are not authorized to be crawling around on the buildings at all, inside or outside. Would you say that people can walk around the buildings at Medfield State Hospital?
Around on the ground, yes.
Right. Could I walk up? Could somebody walk up to a building in the Medfield State Hospital and not go into the building? Sure. Okay. If that building were dangerous, bricks falling, porches collapsing and things, is that a safety concern to this board?
If you're saying like if a wall was about to fall, would we do something?
If a porch is falling down?
If we had a clear threat, but I don't think we have that.
You may not be aware.
Well,
you might want to
I think you can walk around there.
There are some threats. I guess my concern is there are safety concerns.
Yeah.
That's first. So I would suggest that the board walk around, identify them, and take care of it. The second thing is, we should be concerned about the decay of the buildings, because if we're putting all those eggs in the basket and the buildings continue to decay, I don't care that if Trinity says, we're buying the buildings. We have to be concerned, because that's a big fish that we need, and if they walk away, good luck to us. Thank you.
Bill? Yep. Okay.
First off, huge thank you. I know the work that goes into it. I'm sure a bunch of you guys are, when you hear about doing this piecemeal year over year, like the idea of coming back and doing this process again next year is a huge time up to the town. And so I think that should be recognized too as we think about year over year overrides. I think I understand, I'm sorry, Mr. Name, Steve's question. So as it relates to the set-aside fund, I got the name wrong, but so I think the question is, as you think about the budget next year, right? You will have the roughly $60 million budget, and then you'll get the normal 2.5% on that, right? But you will also get the fact that we're only spending $1 million of the $1.9 million. So you would get that incremental 900,000 next year, as you think about FY '28, right? Assuming you're going to spend the whole $1.9 million that year.
Right.
So that extra incremental 900,000 is roughly 1.5% of the 60 million.
Yeah.
Right? And then you would have the ability to tap the set-aside fund too, which is another 900,000, so another 1.5%. So I think that's the underlying root of the question is, essentially you could have the 2.5% normal Prop 2.5 increase, plus the incremental 900,000 that we're not spending this year, plus the $900,000 that we saved by not spending it this year. You essentially have two $900,000 buckets if you track. And so you
I'm not following that. Yeah, I'm not following that.
So this year, we're going to increase 1.9 this year, but we're not going to spend 900,000. Right.
The levy is going up.
Right. The levy's going up 1.9.
Yeah. And then
we're not spending.
We're going to spend about $1 million, a little over $1 million, right,
So
in the operating budget.
We're saving 900,000.
Right. Correct.
So fast forward now to FY '28.
Yeah.
Right. In terms of spending, now we have that whole $1.9 million available again to us.
Yeah.
And so that represents an incremental. Sorry, Christine's looking at me like I'm.
No. I'm following you.
So that recommends So that contemplates essentially you now have an extra 900,000 available to you to spend that you didn't spend in FY '27 by virtue of having the whole pool and not saying that you're going to save anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Plus the 2.5%.
Right. So I think I guess by my math, you essentially get to. You could have essentially a 5.5% pool of spending available without an override.
So I think if you look at it like this, the 1.95, you're raising that, and you're taking that, you're raising that 1.9, and you're taking that 900, and you're putting it in the stabilization fund.
Right.
So, and then you're getting 2.5%, but I think you're adding in that extra 900,000, if I'm correct. Yeah.
Right. You're spending it.
To save it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but you're not getting an extra 900.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, there's only one 900. There's only one 900.
No, but it's permanently in the tax base.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. So maybe just work numbers, right? So sorry to get into the details, but
no, this is good because now we're gonna create a little spreadsheet to show exactly how this works.
That's what I'm saying. Like $60 million of total tax base. Sorry, 61 million if I have it right on here. Right, but you're actually charging 62 and saving 900,000, so we're only spending 61.
No.
Okay, I don't. I'm not follow up because
I think we should do a.
I thought it was going to help clarify, but I've only made it more complicated.
So
you're raising it to spend it. Let's do a little for everybody who wants to. We can do a little financial team tutorial with our Prop 2.5 and tax levy.
Okay. Sorry, Bill Werner from 10 Gary. So I think maybe Steve, the question for you guys is, like, if you get to FY '28 and you don't need the 900. Can that then just roll?
If we get to FY '28 and for some reason the state gives us all sorts of Chapter 70 money or something, or we get all sorts of state aid, that money we wouldn't need to grow. To keep the budget at a sustainable level. Theoretically, there's a scenario where we wouldn't need what was in the stabilization fund, so it would just stay there until some future year when we need it. But I don't know, I wouldn't put high odds on the fact that we're going to get any more money from the state.
Yep.
So.
Okay, that's great. I mean, I know within what we see in our businesses, it's, double digits impact on healthcare, utility costs are through the roof.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when you're governed by 2.5% a year, you run into this problem with there's nowhere else to go but labor and services, and it's a giant problem, not just for this town, but for businesses across the board. So I just appreciate that. And I know this has been coming down the tracks, pretty much since COVID, when inflation went through the roof, and we haven't had an override all through that period where everyone's seeing the prices go up across the board. So
we would go through our normal budget process in '28, reevaluate what we think the revenues are, look at department needs, And if we don't need all of the 900, we won't recommend that to town meeting that you vote on taking all of it out. It'll stay in there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Again, thank you guys for all your service and getting this done. It's a tremendous amount of work and everything, and I appreciate it.
Okay, we're going to go back online for the next question.
All right, this is from Kate. Can you clarify, please, the override will be discussed at town meeting, but in order to pass or not pass, it will require a vote at the polls?
That's correct. It will be. It's a two-step process. Town meeting's the first step. If the override gets approved, then there's a date that we've scheduled, June 8th, excuse me, where there'll be an election. Right after town meeting, the plan would be that the select board would meet and we would have the amount of the override. It would go into the ballot, and that there's a certain notification period that we have to satisfy. That's why the election is June 8th. And so it's a two-step process. It doesn't pass unless both votes are approved, the town meeting vote and the June 8th vote.
And both are simple majority.
Yes, they're both majority votes, correct.
Chris?
Chris Potts, 7 Curve Street. I tell you, it's been such an education for me being at all these meetings to hear all the work, see all the work that's gone into all this. So I thank the Warrant Committee, especially Steve. It's been amazing. One of the slides that you showed very early on in this process was a list basically of all the various revenue sources that are available to the school. There are not a whole lot of them, but and we've pretty much exercised all of them except for one. Across the Commonwealth, every public school district has the option of participating in school choice. There are so many pros and cons to this. My question about this has to do with, based on my research, all the districts across the Commonwealth, most of them I should say, hold their public hearing on this school choice decision before town meeting, if they're a town meeting town. They do that on purpose because they want to make sure that this revenue source is discussed among the public as it goes into the decision-making process on what goes into the budget and what the revenue sources are. Traditionally, with maybe one exception, we have not held that hearing until after our town meeting. So my question is, why is that the case? Because when you look at the school choice, we have the option here, when you look at the budget and you say, okay, well, we could cut 4 teachers. Well, if we adopted school choice and we said, well, we've got under-enrollment at the high school and the middle school, which according to MSBA, we are significantly under-enrolled in both of those schools based on capacity. We would get $5,000 per student for someone that might come in from another district near us, say Millis or Westwood or whatever, if they wanted to come into Medfield. We would get $5,000 per student for that student that came in. We set the grade, we set the number of seats. So if you do the math, 5 students per grade at the middle school and the high school would generate $200,000, which could cover easily the cost of 3 teachers that would get cut as part of these budget questions. Now again, there's pros and cons. There's a lot of cons to this. Newton has had a big debate about school choice. They've had split votes with their school committee. So my fundamental question is, why do we not do the public hearing as part of the budget process with us? And who makes the decision when we hold this public hearing?
The school committee decides when the school committee decides when the school choice hearing is, and the school choice hearing has historically been in May in Medfield, right? So, and year over year, school choice has not been something that we've gone forward with. We look at it every year in regards to the price that you bring, the cost per pupil that you're going to be bringing in from additional towns, right, as you just mentioned, and what the cost it is to educate a child in Medfield.
So my question is about the hearing specifically. Mm-hmm. It's not about the pros and cons of school choice. Okay, when is our hearing now for school choice this year?
May 14th, I believe.
And when is town meeting?
May 4th.
Exactly.
Okay.
And in the previous years, it's always been, except for 1 year, we've had this hearing after town meeting.
So Chris, before I came here, which was I think 12 years ago, because your children were in the system, when was the hearing?
We had 1 year when it was in April.
No, prior to, when your kids were in the system, when was the hearing?
Well, school choice wasn't really that.
Yes, it was. The school choice has been going on for a long time.
It doesn't.
No, I'm just asking.
I guess it doesn't. It's a moot point because it's a moot point. Does it matter what does it matter what we've done in the past?
I'm only asking.
Basically, like the last 10 years.
No, I understand.
We haven't had that hearing until after town meeting.
I understand, but in the 2000s there was an override, year after year after year after year. When was that vote?
I don't remember.
Okay, thank you.
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We are looking at an override this year in a very significant budget cycle.
I understand, but we had overrides year after year after year, and that vote was taken in May, and it's never changed.
But it's been after town meeting.
Correct. You just admitted that. Thank you.
No, I'm saying, what I'm saying is this, so we're making a vote on school choice after town meeting when the budget has been set. That's okay?
It's something that this district has been doing for a long time.
Well,
That's what I'm saying.
Why is that an excuse? Who makes a decision? We have a school committee. You know, at the January budget hearing, Leo Brem said, you made a good point, Chris, and I am analyzing the numbers and I'm going to share it with my peers. Here we are approaching May town meeting. Where is the analysis on this? I mean, the warrant committee brought that up as one potential revenue source, and we have yet to talk about it before town meeting, so that our taxpayers have another view of another revenue potential, and they understand the pros and cons. Then the school committee can vote on it after knowing what the public thinks. But we're not given the choice. Town meeting goes, people vote for the budget, then you guys hold your public hearing, and it's like, okay, we're just going to vote against it because we always have, and nobody gets the information about the pros and cons.
I mean, I don't think that's fair or true in regards to us getting the pros and cons or any research that any committee member has done either on their own.
I've been at all the meetings, Michelle. I've seen the lack of information. There's been no information.
I feel like that is not accurate.
And the information that is shared is not accurate. So I would just say we need to change that practice.
Thank you for your feedback.
Online?
I'm just going to summarize this one because Mike kind of touched on this, but it's a way to explore changing town meeting and modernizing it. So I don't really know if we need to, I think we kind of answered that one already. So the final one on here I have is from Aaron. Will the vote on the override happen at the beginning or end of the town meeting? Can you estimate a time, Mr. Moderator?
This is the hottest of seats. So the proposed draft agenda, which is, as always, subject to change, but in the order that I expect articles to be called up on, is on the town website right now. We are going to begin with the consent agenda, which I think has 12 articles in it that will be voted as one, unless someone puts a hold on any of those articles. Then we will go right into the budget. We will start with 13, 14, and 15 right off the bat, and then the articles after that are in some thematic order that made sense in my head. That is also again posted on the website. Again, subject to change, but not, as far as we sit here today, not likely to change. If I were to put fake numbers on timing, opening ceremonies goes anywhere from 14 to 17 minutes. Then the consent agenda, maybe between 4 and 7 minutes, and then we'll get right into the budget, and that depends on everyone that shows up and what they want to talk about. But that's my best guess.
Other questions? Any other questions in the room? I know, Dick, you want to talk again. Jean? So,
Can we ask
yeah, please, go ahead.
non-budget questions?
Question?
Oh, are we
It's
on
a
the
non-budget question, though. Can we?
I think we are on the not budget questions.
Okay.
I think we're on the
Jean
final
Mineo, Alder
questions.
I guess this is a question for Gus and the Select Board. Have you thought through what the process, I'm thinking about Article 23 and Parcel B. Have you thought through what that process would be in order to determine what the 12 acres could be designated for development?
So I think the short answer is, in terms of literally thinking it through, if the funding is approved, then we'd be releasing a contract for a consultant to take a look and pick the right areas. I don't think, the Select Board has not had that detailed discussion of what needs to go into that. For those here and those listening, I actually thought the Warrant Committee's explanation of Parcel B and the funding that's being requested here, it's important to understand. I know there's a lot of signs up, no development on Parcel B. This is not an article to develop Parcel B. Right. This is an article to designate the 12 acres of land that we had negotiated with the state in the LDA to designate 12 acres of land that can be developed. So it's simply permission to even move forward or consider moving forward with development. Otherwise, our hands are tied because we don't have anything. And I guess the other piece of it from the state standpoint is that what goes, the mirror image of that and the commitment is once we've designated those 12 acres, the rest of the property on Parcel B then has an agricultural restriction on it, which is in the state's interest to do that. The reason that I, at least personally, thought this was important to tackle was that when we were talking about the basketball facility that was there, a number of people came and spoke against that particular facility, and various people, both either publicly in the meeting or outside of the meeting, raised concerns around a lot of issues. You know, the issues around, are you going to develop the sledding hill? That one came out. But there's also issues around legitimate water restrictions. There are issues with people who are concerned about sight lines, which might have an impact on how high up on the hill would be where we would want that land to be developed. So the thought here in designating the 12 acres is to make sure that we have 12 acres on Parcel B that doesn't violate any of what I'll say the second order regulatory restrictions that don't have to do with doing anything specific with the property, but do have to do with complying with regulations that might constrain what we can use, to try to figure all that out so that what we know for sure is we get to a 12 acres, which, should we choose to develop it, and remember the town has to approve development. It's not the Select Board that chooses. Should we ever want to develop the land, we're confident that that land is compliant with any regulatory restrictions, be they environmental, water resource, and even for that matter, taking into account some of the strong views of the residents of what they value, like don't build on the sledding hill. And there were some people that did raise issues around view sheds and things like that that would have an impact. So, no, are we ready to issue an RFP right now if this gets approved? No. I do think there's some discussion that we'd have to make sure we've covered everything. But directionally, I think from at least what I personally took, so I'm not speaking for the Select Board, all three of us, directionally what I took was that there were some concerns that were raised that didn't have to do with actually developing a piece of property, that had to do with making sure we're compliant with a bunch of restrictions, and had to do with reassuring the residents that we weren't going to be looking at using certain kind of land like the sledding hill that I think we all recognize is basically a non-starter.
So I guess the follow-up question was, would you consider some sort of a coalition or allowing other residents to have some input on that process? I would consider it, but what I'd be, again, I'm speaking personally here because we haven't discussed it. I would consider it,
But what I wouldn't want is a coalition that is loaded with people who have preconceived notions, and that just becomes a sparring thing. That what that will do is that will default to nothing getting resolved and gridlock. So I won't rule it out. I wouldn't rule it out categorically, but I would have some strong reservations of establishing that kind of a coalition, because I don't know who's in it, as opposed to, if you'd asked us, or if you'd asked me, would you make sure that the process you use to get to that RFP is a process which is open and receptive to public input throughout the process? Absolutely.
Okay.
Setting up a coalition to kind of do what we're supposed to do,
Okay.
I have reservations. And it's a personal opinion on
The
that.
open process is an excellent answer. Yeah. Thank you.
Eugene, we're going to have one more question from the audience here. Dick, we're going to come around to you. One new questioner.
Viglis 14, Gary. Just a quick logistics question that came up a bunch, Mike, but just so that people can hear it. The doors don't close at like 7:05, correct? No. Okay. It was asked a lot today and has been asked amongst parents, so I just wanted to make sure that that was stated.
You can come in up until the end of the meeting. You can
Great.
come in anytime.
Thank you.
Yep. Online question?
You can't leave till we're done, but you can come in anytime.
This is not like a conclave. It's
Double locked doors. Dick H. Juniper, Dick Judge H. Juniper. So, Mike, you were saying that the school choice, this is the first time I've heard of it tonight. That's always the way we've done it. I can't fit in the pants that I wore in third grade, so I need to change. And so I think what people are going to be asking for is a change to that. And my question is, how do we make that change? Do we make it through the school committee, changing the people in the school committee, or how do we do that?
You can email us or speak to any of us, definitely.
Great. And what are the chances of that being done before this vote? Kind of not very good, I guess, huh?
I'm sorry, you want us to have this public hearing before town meeting? Is that the question?
Yeah.
I don't think that that's going to be very possible, given that it's Wednesday right now and we have to publish meetings 48 hours in advance.
Okay.
And I don't think we can change we do have a meeting on Monday beforehand, but I don't think we would be changing that to a public hearing before town meeting.
Okay.
We wouldn't be able to do that.
So that's fine. I'd like to give to people of Medfield more choices as far as what they can expect and more funding sources. And the fact that that has never been brought up before, and that the school committee has always voted on it, is disconcerting to me, because you're voting on taking a pass on that funding choice when the people should really be aware of it. And so
I think that point has been.
I'd like to get that going as soon as possible.
It's been raised tonight for sure. Thank you. Do we have a final question in here? In the audience, any online questions, Brittany?
No, just another plug to start working on changing town meeting processes and charters.
We need a lot of people on the Charter Review Commission,
Yes,
so I'll be taking names.
We'll be reaching out to you, Kate.
Yes, and be careful what you wish
careful
for
what you
as
wish
well.
for.
You know, we do have a situation which has some inconveniences and can be difficult and challenging for a lot of families. We also have a body that convenes on a date long established in advance. People come together, they get to legislate, they get to have all of the rights to participate in the discussion and the deliberation, and they also get to vote, and they get to do it face to face, in a way that some people may think that's old school, other people may think that's advantageous, but we would need to come up with a way to make that migration away from this traditional meeting element. And there's only a couple other alternatives, Mike, that you identified, right, that requires a long process, but it would need to begin with a charter commission review, and so it sounds like we have some people who would be volunteering for the commission, which is always good.
You sound like you're making pretty good moderator yourself.
Not like I haven't thought about it. I want to thank everybody, by the way, for the whole process that I've been observing here a little bit from a distance, to the school committee, the warrant committee, our town officials, the Board of Selectmen, selectmen, to be able to do this and keep working. All the challenges have been identified, in Medfield relative to who pays our taxes, the neighbors and the friends of ours to a very, very large degree. A lot of other kind of systemic factors, that require us to come together and to do a lot of hard work. So we'll see what happens at town meeting on Monday night. Please come. Please participate. Be a citizen legislator, and hopefully enjoy the exercise. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
So I hear a motion to close the select board from Select Board Member Murphy. Do I have a second? Okay, let's see. Select Board Member Murphy, and Select Board Member Peterson, and Select Board Member Murby. Aye.
I'd like to make a motion to close the school committee meeting. Sophia, second. We'll take a roll call vote, although I think Leo signed off a while ago. Michelle Kirby, yes. Kirkby, yes. Thank you.
It happens.
Awesome.